Well, Heidi ho, my peeps. It has been a little minute since I've talked to you. Woo! Past few weeks have been a roller coaster. First, I want to thank all of you guys who sent condolences when you saw my little slideshow show about Mallory passing. That was tough, and I appreciate all your words of support. Man, that was a hard one to get through. But it was only one of many things I've been going through, all at the same time. And my body said, you know what? We're done. We're done. We're going to shut you down. You're not shutting yourself down, so we are going to shut you down. And I ended up in the emergency room. It's funny. When I try to tease out all the stuff that's been going on, nothing sounds particularly awful in and of itself. It's just life stuff that we all deal with. Supporting friends and family through their difficult travails, losing an elderly animal that you knew you were going to lose probably this summer, trying to run real fast to catch up with home maintenance and, doing stuff outside that has to be done for, in my case, fire prevention. Dealing with the equipment having to be replaced, blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's just stuff, and we all deal with it. But life managed to cook me a toxic cake of circumstances and then shove it down my throat all at once, and I just couldn't. So the day after Mallory died, I woke up not real nauseated, and I had some pain in my back a little bit, and then my chest started to hurt, and the pain in my back got worse and started to radiate forward, and my nausea got just really bad. It got so bad that I dug around in my stash of old medications and found a Compazine that was 10 years old and took that hoping it would help, and it didn't. And finally, toward the afternoon, I told Grant, you know what? I need you to take me to ER because something's going on. So he did. And my ER experience was probably the best I've ever had, with one or two exceptions. But by that I mean he got me into our emergency room. I signed in, and within 5 minutes I was taken back and put in a little patient chair that was broken. It wouldn't lean back, and I was just really struggling with the nausea and the pain, and I was freezing cold, so the guy brought me some warm blankets, and I kept leaning forward in this chair because of the nausea, trying to get away from that feeling. And as I leaned forward, I would start to go a little woozy, and it's a wonder I didn't end up face planting right on that floor, because I was listing side to side like a poorly designed cruise ship. I mean, it was just quite an experience. But they treated me immediately with Mylanta laced with lidocaine for the awful pain I was having, and some medication to get rid of my nausea, and I think they gave me something for my blood pressure, which was really high, and it normally isn't these days, but it was quite high. And then I just kind of sat there, and they just watched me to see what was going to happen. And after a couple of hours, my nausea had subsided, the pain had subsided. I was still nauseated, and I was still in pain. But, I said, you know what? It's time to go home, and I agreed. So I did. So while I was there, they also did an EKG and a chest x-ray, and everything was fine. Nothing was wrong with my heart. I didn't have any thing in my lungs that they could find, because that's part of where it was hurting, was all throughout my chest. And it was what I had assumed it was. Reaction to stress, anxiety attack, whatever you want to call it. But I was so glad that I went in and had it checked out, because it takes, those of you guys who know me know that I am one tough old bird. It takes a lot for me to even go to the doctor's office over something, let alone into the emergency room, for anything at all. I mean, that's just not my MO. So as you can imagine, I was pretty unsettled by my symptoms. Anyway, so I got home, had a good night's sleep, and then my memory's a little fuzzy. I can't remember how long it was before Grant took me down to San Diego to visit my friend Rachel for a week. It was a couple of days, I think. It might have been longer, but life was just coming at me so quickly and I was trying to figure out when I could extricate myself out of here to go down and spend a week with her and her husband. And every day was presenting some new challenge, something I had to do, some promise I'd made to someone that didn't get completely fulfilled, having to take the dog in to the vet so I could have her cremated, that kind of stuff. It was just one thing after another. But finally, within a few days, I got to a place where I could just leave everything here and get in the passenger seat, and Grant drove me down to San Diego, a 6-hour drive, and dropped me off, and then turned around and came home. So he was on the road for over 12 hours, bless his heart, and then did it again to pick me up. But I had told him the day before, I said, listen, I can drive myself, all the pain and chest pain and everything is gone. But that morning when I was he was loading the car for me, and I was, wandering around making sure I had everything. He's watching me, and he says, he says, I don't think you should drive yourself to San Diego. Why don't I do it? So at the last minute, he took me, which was the smart move, because I was still pretty shaky and not real functional yet. So San Diego. Wow. I don't know how many of you guys have ever been to San Diego, particularly in June, but let me tell you what. That place, just being there, I mean, let alone I was there with dear friends, and particularly probably closest friend who really truly knows me from our childhood, early adolescence. In addition to just being there with her, the environment was wonderful. The hills east of San Diego are beautiful. It's kind of it's bordering on sort of high desert, sort of chaparral kind of ecology, and it's all built up with housing and places to shop and all that sort of thing. In San Diego proper, of course, and then east of San Diego, where my friends live. And the weather in June is usually much cooler than it is where I live. Often overcast or cloudy. They often get some rain, usually not much, but some rain. And that's indeed the way it was when I was there. Overcast, cloudy. A couple of days the sun came out. It rained several nights while I was there. And just the whole experience was great. You know, we did all the things. Went out a couple of times to dinner. We spent some time with her granddaughters and her daughter, whom I adore. I wish I'd had the opportunity to spend some time with her son as well, but that they had other things going on, so we weren't able to get together. But, you know, we watched some TV. We had some dinner together. We spent a lot of time resting. Spent some time just reading. Just a beautiful, quiet, calm week that was so restorative. I barely have words to describe how beneficial it was for me physically to be there. We got to spend a lot of time in her gloriously beautiful backyard was gorgeous. And she sent me home with a bunch of succulent cuttings. I have a big old bag full that I'm going to go outside and plant today. But oh yeah, and we also worked on a craft project. I haven't done much crafting outside of, you know, doing the mice here and there for quite some time. And we ended up making centerpieces for her luncheon that's coming up. That's for the miniature club that she belongs to. It's coming up later in June, and she was tasked with ordering the food and doing the table decor and all that. So she came up with a theme of summer camp, which I think is an adorable theme. It's kind of funny. We both sort of thought of it at the same time. We were kind of kicking around ideas, and one or the other of us said, "What about summer camp?" And it was like, yeah, I was thinking about the same thing. So that's what she went with. And I had Grant cut some wood rounds out of a long trunk of cedar, about this high, this big around. And she painted the top green, and I made little tents and little sleeping bags and put a couple of pine trees on either side, ran a little string with pennants. We made these little campfires out of electric tea lights that flicker. She made a little wooden table with a acorn bowl. So she and her crew are going to finish those up sometime soon, and I can't wait to see how it all turns out. It should be lovely. She ordered, for the disposable partyware, she ordered plates and cups and napkins and stuff that looked like a cross section of a redwood tree. I mean, it looked like a redwood round, the plate did. Adorable. And then she's ordering some red and white gingham napkins to kind of go with it. So it has this lovely camp aesthetic that I just thought was adorable. So anyhow, we worked on that. Then Grant came last night and picked me up, and we drove home. And this time, instead of driving the same route we took, which was straight down the I-5 through Los Angeles and Orange County and, you know, Mission Viejo and all those little towns until you finally get to San Diego, almost to the border of Mexico. Instead of taking that route, which is always congested and always slow, we came home through the desert, which was really cool. We drove east of San Diego and then got on the freeway that takes you through the San Bernardino area, kind of skirts the Big Bear Lake area, and then we picked up the road that takes you through Mojave, and then dropped down into Bakersfield, which is in the San Joaquin Valley where I live, and straight home. So it was really neat to see Joshua trees again. I hadn't been through the Mojave Desert in years and years and years. I mean, he and I took a trip to Las Vegas. We drove, but we were talking and I wasn't paying attention. And this time I really paid attention to the terrain. And it was real neat to go through there again. A lot of funky old buildings and sketchy looking enclaves. And it was just fascinating. So yeah, got home last night and had a nice long sleep, and I am up and feeling functional and ready to run at it with full steam ahead again. So that brings me to my novel that I've been writing. I have written, the last time I was on here with you, I read chapter 9. I've added a few things to chapter 9 that I want to share with you. And then I also wrote chapter 10. So I believe I want to read what I added to chapter 9 now, and then I'm going to do a separate video and read chapter 10. But what I added was a little bit about how Sarah, our protagonist, met her recently ex-boyfriend Jason. I never told you guys how they met, and I felt like it was important to know a little bit more about her backstory. So this is inserted. You don't really need to know what came before or after. This information kind of stands alone. So here we go. They had met at a media event in San Francisco. After attending a few uninspiring demonstrations and wandering the displays, Sarah found herself packed into a banquet room with 200 other artists, copywriters, and other media pros. She picked at her mediocre prime rib, a little too rare and a little too cold, and wished she'd worn more comfortable heels to this snooze fest. The mind-numbingly dull dinner speeches nearly lulled her to sleep by the time they'd served the gummy tiramisu, which inexplicably tasted faintly of hand lotion. One quick gin and tonic at the open bar and early to bed sounded like the right way to end this evening. But as she took her drink from the bartender and turned away, she smacked right into Jason. Ice-cold club soda sloshed down the front of her dress, a sexy slip-style vintage Armani she'd paid way too much for. Jason looked horrified, grabbed a cocktail napkin, and started swiping at the taupe silk, stammering out an apology. Sarah was about to let him have it with some pithy and dismissive quip when their eyes met, and those baby blues melted her for the first time. They talked until 3 a.m., thrilled to discover that they were both New Yorkers, and continued their conversation on the early morning flight home the next day. They started dating that night with dinner at an Italian restaurant in the Queens neighborhood where she'd grown up. He spent the night at her place, and by the time she wiped scrambled eggs from the corner of his mouth the following morning, they had become a couple. Okay, so that was an insert into the chapter I've already read. So with that, I'm going to say bye-bye. Thanks again, all of you who have been reading. I keep saying you're reading it, but you're not reading it. You're listening to it. All of you have been listening to this novel as it blooms and becomes something. And also everyone who mentioned Mallory's passing and sent, your love and condolences my way. Like I said, I knew that she wasn't going to last too much longer with what the vet told me is that with a diabetic dog, by the time it's diagnosed, they usually have a few years left. And she lived 2 years, maybe longer, after we found out that she was sick with that. Plus, she was quite old. At least 16, maybe 17, 18. We're not too sure because we don't know how old she was when my son rescued her from being smashed in the middle of a street. And but I knew she was real old, so I was expecting it, but you're never ready. So yeah, I've put that in place in my head and heart, exactly where it needs to be, and now I can, now I can move forward. A couple people have asked if we're going to get another house dog. Possibly, probably, but not now. Certainly not now. In part because we've got a little bit of traveling we need to do. I need to go with Grant back to Nebraska, probably not on this first trip that he's taking in July, but maybe sometime in the fall. I really want to see the kids, and I want to spend time with the grandkids, and just kind of soak up that whole Nebraska side of my life for a while. And the fewer responsibilities you have at home, the easier it is to get away. So I'm going to do that. But I'm sure, knowing me, a whole new passel of animals is going to make its way into my life at some point. So that's what's going on. And stay tuned for chapter 10. I'm really looking forward to sharing that with you. Bye-bye.